I'm Rachel Morgan, 34 years old, and if you had told me that cutting my Zurich business trip short would change my life forever, I probably would have laughed. But nothing could have prepared me for what I saw when I pulled up to my own house that day. It was supposed to be my quiet return. No fanfare, no distractions, just me, my garden, and that bottle of Cabernet I'd been saving for months. I was picturing it the whole flight home, me, sitting on the back porch, watching the sunset over my grandfather's tulips that spelled out onward from the upstairs window. But instead, there were cars everywhere, parked along both sides of my street, on my lawn, blocking my driveway. Strangers were walking in and out like it was some public event. The bass of music shook the pavement beneath my feet. My Uber driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror and said, "Looks like someone's throwing one hell of a party." I couldn't even reply. My jaw was just open. I dragged my suitcase out of the trunk, stared at my house, the house my grandfather left to me, and asked myself a question I never imagined having to ask. Did someone break in? The front yard was trashed, my tulips gone, flattened under dozens of shoes. My teak garden chairs had been shoved together into a smoking lounge. Empty beer bottles were littered around. Someone was tossing coins into my koi pond, like it was some cheap wishing well. I stood there frozen. It felt like I was watching a nightmare unfold. Except it was real. And it was happening to me. With every step toward the front door, my stomach sank deeper. A group of middle-aged men stood on the porch, laughing. Teenagers I didn't recognize were running wild through the yard, kicking over flower pots. No one even glanced at me like I belonged there. At my own house, the front door wasn't just open, it was propped open. With one of my potted plants, I stepped inside and the smell hit me like a wall. Sweaty bodies, alcohol, cheap perfume, burned food, all of it swirling together into one nauseating cloud. My foyer, once peaceful, with just a little antique table and a mirror, was now a dump site for jackets, purses, and plastic bags. Someone had even set up a table for name tags and a guest book, and hanging right above it was a banner. Morgan Family Reunion 2025. Bringing the generations together. My ears were ringing. I felt like the floor was tilting under me. Family reunion. In my house, a family reunion I knew absolutely nothing about. I pushed further inside, squeezing through clusters of people. Some faces I vaguely recognized. Others were complete strangers. My great-aunt Mabel, who I hadn't seen in a decade, was camped out in my reading nook, sipping a cocktail like she owned the place. A group of kids was sprinting up and down the stairs I had refinished just last fall. Someone had moved my grandmother's antique secretary desk, just shoved it against the wall to make space for a buffet table covered in aluminum trays. And there, right there, in my kitchen, was my mother, Beverly, 62. Perfect hair, fresh highlights, wearing a tailored floral dress with a corsage pinned to her chest. She was barking orders at two women in black polos who looked like catering staff. "Check the pantry for more serving trays," she said, waving them off like this was her house. "Desserts need to be out by noon." She turned and spotted me. Her eyes narrowed. Her smile slipped. There was no joy, no surprise, no, "Oh my God, you're home early." Just annoyance. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" she asked. Flat, like I was the one who didn't belong. I blinked. "I live here, Mom." What is all this?" She gestured like it was obvious. "It's the family reunion. We've been planning it for months. In my house." My throat tightened. Without telling me, she waved her hand like I was being unreasonable. "Oh, come on. You're always busy with work. You said yourself, this house is too big for just you." I never said that, I snapped. Never. Before I could say another word, my brother appeared. Ethan, 31. Same boyish grin he'd used since we were kids to get out of everything. He had a tray of empty glasses balanced in one hand and wore a custom polo shirt with Morgan Family Reunion host embroidered on it. "Oh, hey, Rach," he said casually. "You're back early." "Surprise, surprise." "Yeah, you could say that." I stared at him. "How did you even get in?" He shrugged, shameless. "Mom had the spare key you gave her for emergencies." "Chill. Everything's under control. We even hired cleaners for tomorrow." My eyes scanned the room again. My living room, my floors, my furniture, my walls, all of it, taken over, without my knowledge, without my permission. I spotted a water ring on my grandmother's secretary desk, the same one she told me stories about as a child, scratches on my hardwood floors. My grandfather's antique bar, brought out from storage, now had a lineup of family members mixing drinks like it was a hotel lounge. A tall man I didn't recognize walked up to me with a half-empty beer. "Hey, you look familiar. You from Mabel's side or Richard's?" I stared at him deadpan. "I'm Rachel Morgan. This is my house." His eyes widened. "Oh, you're Maxwell's granddaughter. The one who got the house." The way he said "got the house" made my skin crawl. Like I'd won some twisted lottery instead of inheriting the home where I'd spent half my childhood. He gave me a shrug. "Nice place." Should have been divided among the family, though, if you ask me. Before I could reply, he walked off. I stood there, frozen, the words echoing in my ears. Should have been divided among the family. I wasn't invisible, but I may as well have been. I scanned the room again. My family photos, had been dug out of storage boxes and arranged across the dining table. My grandfather's record collection was being rifled through by teenagers. Then I spotted it. A stack of matching t-shirts on the buffet table. Morgan Family Reunion 2025. Bringing the generations together, with a date. 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. This wasn't some last-minute gathering. This wasn't some "oops, we forgot to mention it to you" event. This had been planned for weeks, and I was never told. My chest tightened. My head spun. I needed air. I stumbled toward the back porch, only to find a group of teenage boys sitting on my patio furniture, scrolling on their phones. "Ugh," one of them groaned. "This family thing is so lame." I felt my hands shake. I walked back inside, past my mother, who was laughing for photos with people I didn't even recognize. Past my brother, who was basking in attention, like he was hosting a charity gala. Past second cousins, great aunts, strangers. Nobody noticed as I grabbed my suitcase, the same one I'd left by the front door when I walked in. Nobody said a word as I wheeled it back out the door. Not a single person called after me as I walked down the street. Halfway down the block, my vision blurred with tears. I pulled out my phone, searched for the nearest hotel, booked a room at the downtown Marriott. As the Uber pulled away, I looked back at my house. My grandfather's house. My house, lit up, full of people who didn't know me, who didn't respect me, who didn't even notice that I wasn't there. The hotel room was quiet, too quiet. I sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at the plain beige walls, my suitcase still zipped, my coat still on. My fingers trembled as they hovered over my phone. I had no idea who to even call. What do you do when your own family treats you like a guest? In the house that legally belongs to you, I couldn't stop replaying the scene. The laughter, the conversations, the fact that no one noticed me leave, the fact that no one cared. It wasn't just a party. It was something bigger, something uglier. This was about entitlement. My mom, my brother. They had decided without me that my house was the family's property, that it didn't matter what Grandpa Maxwell's will said, that it didn't matter that I lived there, paid the taxes, restored, it maintained it. None of it mattered to them. To them. I was just the girl who was too busy working to be part of their perfect little narrative. But they had no problem using the space I worked my butt off to maintain. And as that realization hit me harder than anything I did something I hadn't done since I was a teenager. I cried. Big ugly shoulder shaking sobs. Because for all the years I had tried to convince myself otherwise, it finally became crystal clear. I didn't have a family, I had relatives. And those are two very, very different things. Around midnight, when the ache in my chest became unbearable, I hit dial. My best friend Hannah picked up on the second ring. Hey, what's wrong? She asked immediately, probably sensing it in my silence. I told her everything. Every single detail. From the moment I saw the cars to the moment I walked out of the house with no one stopping me. Her silence grew heavier with every word. When I finished, she exploded. Are you freaking kidding me, Rachel? What the hell? No, no, no. I sniffled. Am I overreacting? I mean, it's a family reunion. Maybe I'm... Don't you dare finish that sentence. No, you are not overreacting. You are underreacting. That is insane. You don't throw a party in someone's house without asking. Family or not. I let her words wash over me. Validating. Grounding. Because, for a second there, I was about to gaslight myself. Hannah continued. And your mom. Your brother. My God, Rachel. The entitlement. The audacity. This isn't new either. This is just the loudest version of the same crap they've pulled your whole life. She wasn't wrong. The memories started flooding in, one after another, like my 8th birthday. When Mom forgot to order a cake that didn't have nuts, I was allergic. When I started crying, she waved it off, saying, "Stop being dramatic. The other kids are enjoying it." Or my high school graduation. They showed up halfway through the ceremony because Ethan had a baseball game. It's just a diploma, Rachel. You'll get another one in college. Or when I got my engineering scholarship, a huge competitive scholarship. And my mother's reaction, are you sure you want to do engineering? It's not very feminine. Meanwhile, Ethan flunked out of community college and somehow still got a congratulations dinner. It had always been this way. Hannah was right. This was just the most disrespectful, most undeniable proof yet. You can't let this slide, Hannah said firmly. Not this time. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a choice they made. I know, I whispered. I know. We stayed on the phone for hours, talking, venting, processing. By the time we hung up, the sun was already creeping over the horizon. And for the first time in a long, long time, a switch flipped in my brain. I was done. Done pretending this was normal. Done pretending I was okay with being treated like an afterthought. Done making myself small to keep the peace. At 9 a.m., I returned to the house. Most of the cars were gone. The front yard looked like a war zone. Trash scattered across the lawn. My garden destroyed. Beer bottles on the steps. Paper plates caught in the bushes. It was worse than I expected. Way worse. I stepped inside, and it was like walking into the aftermath of a hurricane. Empty cups everywhere. Spilled food ground into the rugs. The scent of alcohol, sweat, and burned food hung in the air like a curse. I walked to the kitchen. There she was, my mother, sitting at the breakfast bar, drinking coffee, scrolling on her phone like nothing had happened. She looked up casually. There you are. Where'd you disappear to last night? So dramatic, Rachel. No apology, no guilt, just a jab at me for leaving. I clenched my fists. I stayed at a hotel. My bedroom was apparently being used as a coat room. Oh, that was Ethan's idea, she said, completely unfazed. We needed the space. You know how these things go. I stared at her. No, Mom. No, I don't know how these things go, because I don't let people trash my home without asking. She sighed as if I was the unreasonable one. You're always so particular about everything. If we'd asked, you would have had a million rules. And besides, you're never around. You're always working. That doesn't mean you get to use my house like it's a public park. From behind me, Ethan emerged. hair a mess, wearing yesterday's clothes. Morning, he mumbled, heading straight for the coffee. Great party, right? Everyone loved the house. I rounded on him. Why didn't you tell me about this? He shrugged. I mean, we needed space. You've got all this space. It just made sense. It just made sense. I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd, so insane, so predictable. This is my house, Ethan, I said slowly, my voice trembling with rage. You don't get to just decide to throw a party here. Technically, my mother chimed in. It's the family home. Your grandfather would have wanted everyone to enjoy it. Oh, that was it? That was the moment the fuse officially lit. I clenched my jaw. Don't you dare. Tell me what Grandpa would have wanted. He left this house to me for a reason. Because he knew I would respect it. I spun on my heel before I said something I couldn't take back. But as I walked through the house, I realized I wasn't prepared for what came next. In my study, the desk, Grandpa's antique desk, it had a deep scratch across the top. And worse, a burn mark from a cigarette. I'd told everyone before I had a strict no-smoking policy inside. It wasn't just a desk. It was where Grandpa had taught me how to draft, where he wrote letters of recommendation for my college, where he signed the will that gave me this house. I felt something snap inside. I stormed to my home office. The door, unlocked, open. A room I always kept locked. Drawers, opened. My work documents, rifled through. My laptop, moved. Even the framed first dollar I'd earned freelancing was cracked. Then I walked upstairs, my bedroom door, wide open, despite the sign, private, please keep closed. My closet ajar, dresser drawers, half open. Someone had been in my private space, touching my things. Going through my life, I stormed back downstairs, fire in my veins. My office was broken into, I said flatly. Ethan waved it off. Oh, some kids were playing hide and seek. No big deal. And Grandpa's desk is damaged. Probably just a water ring. It'll buff out. He shrugged. It's a cigarette burn and a knife scratch, I hissed. It's a 200-year-old desk. My mother sighed, completely unimpressed. Rachel, it's just stuff. Always so dramatic. Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. Just stuff. To them, it was just stuff. But to me, it was my sanctuary, my memories, my home. And in that moment, I knew this was war. I stood there, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter, trying to hold back the storm building inside me. My hands shook. My chest felt tight. Just stuff. That's what my mother had called it. The house my grandfather had built with his own hands. The desk where he'd taught me integrity math and the importance of doing things right. The garden he'd cultivated for decades. All of it was just stuff to them. I pulled out my phone and without thinking called Hannah. She answered on the first ring. Rachel, I need you, I said, my voice cracking. I'm on my way. I didn't even have to explain. While I waited, I walked through every single room in that house with my phone camera taking pictures. Every scratch, every stain, every broken drawer, every destroyed piece of my garden. I documented it all. When Hannah arrived and stepped inside, her mouth fell open. Rachel, oh my God. She spun around, taking it all in the trash on the floor, the broken lamp in the hallway, the burn mark on the antique desk. Her eyes widened as she walked into the dining room and saw the crushed flower arrangements and food smeared into my Persian rug. This is worse than I imagined. I nodded, swallowing hard. Yeah, it is. She walked over and hugged me tightly. So, what now? Are you going to sue them? Call the police? I let out a bitter laugh. I don't even know. But I know one thing for sure. I can't keep pretending this is okay. I glanced toward the kitchen, where my mother and Ethan were still chatting, completely unfazed. As if this was a normal day, a network error occurred. Please check your connection and try again. If this issue persists, please contact us through our help center at help.openai.com. Thulai. Bandanoi. Continue. ChatGPT. Danai Part 4. You can't tear apart what was never whole. Silence. For the first time in my life, my mother didn't have a comeback. She just stood there, mouth slightly open, eyes glossy. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. Ethan wasn't much better. His face had gone from angry red to ghostly white, like someone had just punched him in the stomach. I turned away from them and sat back down at the garden table with Diane. Let's finish this, I said calmly. Diane nodded, sliding a packet of documents toward me. We'll have the contract finalized and ready for signatures within a few hours. Victor is ready to move as soon as you are. Perfect, I replied, not even looking toward my mother and brother as they stood there frozen. By 2 p.m., Victor Jang himself arrived. Mid-40s, sharp, clean cut, quiet confidence. The kind of guy who didn't waste words. You could tell by the way he carried himself that he was used to making quick decisions and making them stick. As he stepped out of his sleek black Tesla, he extended his hand to me. Ms. Morgan, pleasure to meet you. Please, call me Rachel. We shook hands, and he smiled a polite but firm kind of smile. I appreciate the expedited process. I know this is sudden. Oh, you have no idea, I said, shaking my head. Victor glanced at the house, at the broken flower beds, at the trash scattered on the lawn, at the barely standing garden gate. Rough weekend, you could say that. He gave a small chuckle. Well, no worries. I see potential, not problems. Thank God for that. We walked through the house together. I didn't hide the damage, didn't sugarcoat it, didn't try to explain away the stains, the scratches, the broken furniture. Victor nodded thoughtfully as he moved through each room. His assistant trailed behind, taking photos and making notes. When we reached the study, he paused at the desk. This is American Empire period furniture. Circa 1830. I blinked. Yes, you're spot on. He ran his fingers gently over the cigarette burn and the knife scratch. A shame, but fixable. I know a restoration expert who specializes in period furniture. If you're not taking it with you, I'd like to have it restored. My throat tightened unexpectedly. That would mean a lot. Victor nodded with a sincerity that caught me off guard. This house has a soul. I don't plan to rip it out. That one sentence meant more than he could possibly know. We finished the walkthrough and gathered back at the garden table where Diane had set up the closing documents. It was strangely anticlimactic. A few signatures, a few initials, a wire transfer pending, a house sold, a legacy transferred. No thunder, no lightning, no dramatic music. Just the quiet scratch of pens on paper and the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. Scott beamed the entire time, probably mentally calculating his commission check. When we were nearly finished, the front door suddenly slammed open. Stop this, Ethan's voice roared. He stormed down the porch steps like a man possessed. My mother followed right behind him, face blotchy, hands shaking. This is a mistake, Ethan bellowed. She doesn't know what she's doing. Victor barely flinched. He turned slightly, folding his hands in front of him with the calm precision of someone who negotiates million-dollar deals before breakfast. Diane stood smooth as silk. Mr. Morgan, this is a private real estate closing. If you are not a party to the transaction, I must ask you to step away. My mother shoved past Diane like she wasn't even there. Mr. Jang, please, this house. This house has been in our family for generations. My daughter is making a decision in anger. You can't seriously go through with this. Surely, as a businessman, you understand how emotional decisions can ruin families. Victor glanced at me, then at her, then back at me. Mrs. Morgan, he said politely but firmly. I respect family. I respect heritage. But I have entered into a legal agreement with Rachel, who is the sole owner of this property. Ethan's face twisted. Rachel, please. You don't have to do this. You can make whatever rules you want about the house. No more surprise parties. No more guests without permission. We'll follow the rules. Just don't sell it. For a split second, I felt that old familiar tug. The desperate part of me that had spent a lifetime craving their approval, their validation. The part of me that wanted them to finally treat me like family. But I looked at Ethan, at the brother I'd helped over and over again. The brother I'd lent money to, the brother whose bail I'd paid, the brother whose failed business ventures I'd funded. And I realized something. They never changed because they never had to. Why would they? I was always there, cleaning up, paying the bills, fixing the mess. This time, no, it was done. It's too late, I said quietly. Ethan's voice turned sharp. If you do this, don't expect us to be there when you realize what a mistake you've made. I smiled sadly. That's a risk I'm willing to take. Diane Ever, the professional, cleared her throat. Shall we continue? Victor nodded. Yes, please. My mother played her final card. Tears, real ones, streaming down her face. If you do this, Rachel, you're destroying your grandfather's legacy. Is that what you want? Is that really who you are? I set my pen down, turned to face her, looked her dead in the eyes. Grandpa's legacy isn't this house, I said softly. It's the values he taught me. Integrity, self-respect, the courage to build something that lasts. I gestured around the patio, to the trashed lawn, the broken garden, the beer cans. This isn't his legacy, Mom. This is what happens when people forget what legacy means. She sniffed, wiping her face. You're throwing away your family. No, I said quietly. I'm finally choosing myself. And with that, I signed the final page. Victor handed me a cashier's check for the down payment. The rest would be wired when the deed was recorded. We shook hands, and just like that, the house was no longer mine. The silence that followed was suffocating. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed to pause, like the universe itself was holding its breath. I stood up slowly, gathering the keys to the house, the same keys my grandfather had handed me 2 years ago, with a proud smile and the words, "It's yours now, Rachel. Take care of it." I held them for a second, then extended them to Victor. There's a hidden compartment in the library, I told him quietly. Third bookshelf from the left. Push it back. My grandfather kept historical documents about the house in there. Deeds, letters, photos. You might find them interesting. Victor accepted the keys with a respectful nod. Thank you, I promise. This home's history will be honored. His words sat heavy in my chest, but not in a painful way. More like relief, closure. For a second, I thought about his offer. You're welcome to visit any time. But I already knew the answer. No, I said, shaking my head softly. Some chapters, they're meant to stay closed. As Diane packed the paperwork, Scott double-checked the documents, and Victor spoke quietly with his assistant. I walked back toward the house one last time. My mother stood frozen on the porch, shoulders rigid, mouth trembling like she wanted to say something but couldn't figure out how. Ethan wasn't even there. At some point, he had slunk off. Typical. I paused halfway down the front path, took one long look. At the garden, where Grandpa had taught me the difference between weeds and flowers. At the porch, where we'd spent Sunday mornings drinking tea. At the window of the study, where he'd once said, Rachel, some people build with steel, others with code. Both changed the world. I felt the sting in my eyes, but no tears fell. Not this time. This time, it was different. This time, I was walking away by choice. Not because I was forced to, not because I was chased out, but because I finally understood my own worth. I loaded the last box into my car, my grandfather's pocket watch, the small wooden box of letters he wrote me through college, a few family photos from happier times, his fountain pen, the one he used to sign his will, everything else, just stuff. I didn't need it. I closed the trunk, slipped into the driver's seat, and started the engine. I glanced back once. My mother was still standing there in the doorway, expression unreadable. I raised my hand, just a small wave. Then I shifted into drive and pulled away. As the house faded into the rearview mirror, something strange happened. I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel guilt. I felt lighter, freer, as if I'd been carrying a weight my entire life. And finally set it down. The next few days passed in a blur. Paperwork, bank transfers, emails from Scott, calls with Diane to finalize the last pieces. I moved into a furnished apartment on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, just simple, clean, quiet, mine, completely mine. No history weighing it down. No ghosts from the past lingering in the corners. No expectations I couldn't meet. I opened a new investment account for most of the proceeds. Set aside money for taxes. Looked into a financial advisor for the first time in my life. Not because I needed the help, but because I finally had the breathing room to think about my future. Not just survival, not just getting by. My future, and the silence from my family. Oh, it was deafening. No calls, no texts, no angry voicemails. It was like I had ceased to exist in their world the moment that contract was signed. Part of me was relieved. Another part ached an ache that had always been there, if I was honest. A dull pulse of wishing, maybe one day they'll change. But this time, the ache was accompanied by clarity. I hadn't lost a family. I'd lost the illusion of one. That silence shattered on day 9. It started with a ping, then another, then a flood. My social media exploded with messages. DMs from cousins I hadn't seen since I was 12. Great aunts I barely knew. Family members crawling out of the woodwork. And every message was the same flavor. Disbelief, disappointment, anger. I can't believe you sold the house. How could you do that to the family? That home was our legacy, Rachel. How dare you? Some were passive-aggressive. I guess money matters more than family to some people. Others were outright cruel. Grandpa would be ashamed of you. And not a single one. Not one mentioned the part where my mother and brother threw a party in my house without telling me. Not one mentioned the damage. Not one acknowledged the violation. In their version of the story, I was the villain. A selfish woman who sold her family's heritage out of spite. I ignored most of them. Deleted, blocked, muted. But one message made me pause. It was from Melissa, my cousin on Grandpa's side. She'd always been decent to me. The one person in the extended family who never treated me like an outsider. Her message was simple. Hey, I heard about everything. Just wanted to check in. Are you okay? I stared at it for a long time, then typed back, yeah, I'm okay. There's more to the story than you've probably heard, but I'm at peace with my decision. I hope you and your family are doing well. Her response came quickly. Honestly, I figured there was more to it. Your mom and Ethan, they've always had their own version of reality. For what it's worth, I think Grandpa would have understood. He never let anyone walk over him either. A lump formed in my throat. For the first time in a while, it wasn't from sadness. It was from relief, from being seen, from being understood, even if just by one person. Work helped too. Throwing myself into the massive contract I'd landed in Zurich, an international deal that would define my career for years. My team noticed the shift in me, the renewed focus, the sudden lightness. During lunch one day, Hannah grinned at me across the table. You know, you look different. Different how? Lighter, freer, like you're not carrying everyone else's mess anymore. I smiled. Yeah, I guess that's exactly it. 2 weeks after the sale, an unexpected email popped up in my inbox. It was from Victor Jang. Subject line, your grandfather's desk update. I opened it immediately. Inside were photos, close-up shots of the antique mahogany desk. The cigarette burn was gone. The deep scratch sanded, filled, polished. You could barely tell anything had ever happened to it. His message read, the restoration expert believes the damage is fully repairable. Once it's finished, I'd like to offer it back to you. It seems like it holds special meaning. I stared at the message for a long time. My hand hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to say yes, to take back this one piece of my grandfather, the last real physical piece that connected me to him. But then I closed my eyes and let the bigger truth sink in. The house was gone. The past was gone. And while the desk held memories, the memories didn't live inside the wood. They lived in me. I typed back. Thank you so much, Victor. Truly. But the desk belongs with the house. It's part of the story now. Please keep it, restore it, honor it. Just know it meant a lot to me that you asked. His reply was simple. Understood, and I will. And somehow, that exchange was more healing than I ever expected. That evening, I cooked dinner in my new apartment. Pasta, garlic bread, nothing fancy, but it felt comforting. The smell filled the air as I set the table for one. Then the doorbell rang. I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the peephole and felt my stomach drop. My mother, standing in the hallway. Her hair was undone, not styled, not perfect. Her clothes were wrinkled, her eyes swollen like she'd been crying. For a moment, I froze. My first instinct was to pretend I wasn't home, to guard this new piece I'd built. But then, I heard my grandfather's voice in my head. Not his real voice, but the memory of it. Integrity isn't about what's easy, Rachel. It's about what's right. I sighed, undid the latch, opened the door. Mom. She blinked, surprised I'd actually opened it. Rachel. Her voice cracked on my name. Can I please come in just to talk? I stood there, silent, not inviting her in, not sending her away, just weighing it. Then after a moment, I stepped aside. She entered slowly, hesitant, looking around the apartment like it was the strangest thing she'd ever seen. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, cheap white cabinets, laminate floors, builder-grade fixtures. But it was clean. It was peaceful. It was mine. She sat down on the couch, clasping her hands in her lap. It's nice, she offered. Thanks. I sat in the chair across from her. What do you want, Mom? She took a shaky breath. We've been evicted. I blinked. Excuse me? My apartment. The landlord found out Ethan was living there when the lease specifically prohibits additional occupants. He gave us notice. We have to be out by Friday. I leaned back. Processing. So you're here because, she sighed, we don't have anywhere to go. Ethan's, well, looking for work. You know how that is. Yeah, I did. Looking for work in Ethan speak meant browsing online for jobs he'll never apply to. What about your savings, I asked. She winced, looked down. Gone. We used it. For the reunion, she muttered. And some of it went toward helping Ethan's coffee shop idea. My jaw dropped. The coffee shop. The one that doesn't even exist because the lease fell through. Her face went pale. Yes. The room fell silent. Absolutely silent. I took a deep breath. How much do you need? Her head shot up. Just enough for a deposit. First month's rent. Maybe 3,000? 4 max? I swear I'll pay you back. A bitter laugh almost slipped out. Because this right here was the pattern. The crisis. The plea. The promise of repayment that would never come. And for a brief second, the easiest thing in the world would have been to write the check. It would have been so easy to fall back into the role they always gave me. The fixer. the responsible one, the one who bails everyone out. But something had changed. I had changed. I won't give you money, I said firmly. Her face crumbled. Rachel, please, we'll be homeless. I'm not saying I won't help. I said I won't give you money. Her brow furrowed. What's the difference? The difference, I said quietly, is enabling versus helping. I won't write you a check to continue the same cycle that got us here. But I will help you find resources, affordable housing, employment agencies, financial counseling for Ethan, budget workshops, real help. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. We don't need counseling, she spat. We need a place to live. No, I corrected softly. You need both. She shot to her feet, anger flashing now. So this is your revenge, making us jump through hoops while you sit on millions. This isn't revenge, I said, standing too. This is boundaries. Something I should have set a long time ago. She grabbed her purse. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was clenched tight. Boundaries. Is that what your therapist calls it? Cutting off your own family when they need you? I nodded. Calm. Steady. Yeah. That's exactly what my therapist calls it. She stormed to the door, hand on the knob, then paused. For a second I thought, maybe she'd turn around. Maybe she'd finally say the words I'd waited my whole life to hear. Instead, she said, we'll manage without you, like we always have. The irony of that statement, the absolute absurdity, nearly made me laugh. I didn't stop her. As she opened the door, I added quietly, the offer still stands. When you're ready for real help, you know where to find me. She paused, stiff, silent, then left without a word. The door clicked shut behind her, and I stood there in the quiet, in the peace, not shaking, not doubting, not regretting, just standing. For the first time in my life, standing on solid ground. My phone buzzed. It was Hannah. You okay? I stared at the message, let the question sit there, then typed back, getting there. One day at a time. And it was true, more true than I'd ever realized before. 6 months passed, faster than I expected. Spring melted into summer. The suffocating heat of August gave way to the crisp chill of fall. And slowly, almost without realizing it, life started to rebuild itself. My temporary apartment became a stepping stone. I eventually found a cozy townhouse in a quieter neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, a small yard. Nothing flashy, but private, peaceful. Mine, completely undeniably mine. I planted tulips in the backyard, not just any tulips. The same pattern my grandfather had designed onward, visible from the upstairs window. A quiet tribute to him, to everything he taught me, not about houses, but about strength, about building, about knowing when to hold on and when to let go. My career thrived. The Zurich contract was the most successful deal my company had landed in 5 years. My boss publicly credited me at the quarterly meeting. A promotion followed, along with expanded responsibilities in Europe and Asia. My team noticed the change in me, less stressed, more focused, lighter. Hannah noticed too. Over one of our regular coffee catch-ups, she tilted her head and smirked. You know, you're different now. Different, how I asked, sipping my latte. Less tense. You laugh more. You don't look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your back. I smiled. That's because I finally put that weight down. She leaned forward. Rachel, I am so freaking proud of you. Seriously. I nodded, feeling the truth of it. I think, for the first time in my life, I'm proud of me too. Therapy helped more than I ever imagined it would. At first, I went out of obligation. Something to check off the list. Something to help me cope with the family fallout. But it turned into something deeper. I started seeing patterns, realizing how often I had twisted myself into knots trying to earn love from people who only knew how to take. How many times I had sacrificed my own peace for the illusion of family. How I had confused being needed with being loved, and how I had confused enabling with kindness. Bit by bit, those illusions unraveled, and something sturdier grew in their place. Self-respect, boundaries, clarity. 3 months after our last encounter, my mother called, not to ask for money, not to manipulate, just to talk. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "Rachel, it's me. I was wondering if maybe we could meet just to talk." No expectations, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop, halfway between our homes. Neutral ground. When I walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked older, not in a bad way, but in a humbled way. A little less polished, a little less performative. When she saw me, she smiled. Not the fake, strained smile I'd grown used to over the years. A real one. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly as I sat down. I folded my hands in my lap, of course. She took a deep breath, wrung her hands together. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything. About the house, the reunion, the way I've treated you." I stayed quiet. Let her speak. "I wasn't fair to you, Rachel. Not just now. Not just with the party, but for years. I took you for granted. I favored Ethan. I resented your success instead of being proud of you." My breath caught, because for 34 years, I had never heard words like this come out of her mouth. Ever. She kept going. "I think, deep down, I expected you to always be the responsible one, the one who'd hold everything together, and I never really stopped to think about how much that cost you." Her voice trembled. "I'm sorry." I swallowed, hard. "What brought this on?" I asked. She gave a sad smile. "Reality. When you sold the house, when you walked away, it forced me to look at things I'd spent years avoiding. I even went to visit your grandfather's grave, and I remembered something he used to say." She blinked back tears. "Beverly, life doesn't owe you anything. It's what you build with your own 2 hands that matters." My throat tightened. That stuck with me," she whispered. I realized I stopped building a long time ago. I just expected things to be handed to me. By your father, by your grandfather, by you. Her eyes met mine. That's not the example I should have set for my children. I didn't say anything for a long time, because what do you say to that? To the apology you'd stopped believing would ever come? To the words you dreamed of hearing and finally did? When I finally found my voice, it was shaky. "Thank you for saying that." She nodded, fiddling with the coffee sleeve. "I can't change the past, but I'd like to try for a better future, if you're open to it." I didn't make promises. Didn't say, "Of course, everything's fine now," because rebuilding trust isn't a switch you flip. It's a bridge you build, brick by brick. But I nodded. "I'm open." A small, tentative smile spread across her face. "Good." We started small. Monthly dinners, neutral spaces. Just the 2 of us at first. Eventually, Ethan joined. More cautious, more stubborn. His resentment ran deeper. His entitlement harder to untangle. But necessity had forced him into change. His job at the hardware store turned out to be more than a stopgap. Somewhere along the way, he discovered he liked fixing things, literal things. Broken hinges, leaky pipes, cracked tiles. By spring, he'd earned his contractor's license and started a small handyman business. He told me once over coffee, there's something really satisfying about taking something broken and making it work again. I didn't point out the metaphor. He'd find it on his own. Not every relationship was salvageable. Some relatives refused to speak to me, kept their narrative of Rachel, the villain who destroyed the family legacy. And that was fine. I learned to let them go. Learn to stop bleeding for people who would never even offer a bandage. Learn that sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who respects your boundaries, who claps when you win, and holds you when you lose. I built that family, piece by piece, friend by friend, colleague by colleague, neighbor by neighbor. And slowly, life started to feel good. Not perfect, but honest. And that was more than enough. 6 months turned into a year, and life just kept moving forward. One day, I opened my email, and there it was. A message from Victor Jang. Subject line, thought you'd like to see this. I clicked it open. Attached were photos. The house. My house, but not as I'd left it. The siding had been carefully repainted, matching the original Victorian colors from the 1920s. The cracked walkway was now replaced with smooth stone. The broken garden gate was restored, and in the backyard, a fresh garden bloomed. Tulips, not just any tulips, laid out in a pattern, onward, visible from the upstairs window. My hand flew to my mouth. Tears welled instantly. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't ready for the wave that hit me. Victor's message read, "Your grandfather's legacy lives on. Different, but honored. I hope this brings you peace." For a long time, I just sat there staring at the screen, because he got it. He really got it. This wasn't about walls and windows. It wasn't about antique desks or stained rugs. It was about honoring the past while building something new. The next photo was of the study. Grandpa's desk, fully restored, polished, gleaming, the burn mark and the scratch gone. It sat in the same spot by the window, looking out onto the garden. Victor wrote, "The desk was too special to remove. It belongs here, where it always was." I felt my chest ache, not with regret, but with something gentler, softer. Closure. As much as part of me wondered if I should go see it in person, I already knew the answer. No, that chapter was over. The house was no longer mine. It belonged to its next story, its next family, its next set of memories. And that was okay. More than okay. It was right. On the 1-year anniversary of selling the house, I did something I never thought I would. I invited my mother and Ethan to my townhouse. It was the first time they'd seen my new home. When they arrived, my mom looked around the small garden, the clean white walls, the modest kitchen, and said, "It's nice, peaceful." I nodded. "Yeah, it is." Ethan wandered through the living room, hands in his pockets. "Cozy," he said with a crooked grin. It was awkward at first. Small talk, pauses that hung a little too long. But somewhere between the garlic bread and the second glass of wine, laughter slipped in. Real laughter, the kind we hadn't shared in years. As we cleared the table, my mother paused in the doorway, running her fingers lightly over the frame. "You know," she said quietly, "I think your grandfather would be proud of you." I blinked. For selling the house. She turned, met my eyes. For having the courage to make the hard choices. Maxwell never took the easy road either. I didn't expect that. Not from her. It was the final piece of validation I hadn't even realized I was still holding out for. After they left that night, I sat in my tiny backyard. The tulips were just starting to bloom. The cool breeze carried the scent of earth and new beginnings. And for the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt completely whole. Not because everything was perfect, not because the wounds were fully healed, but because I had finally learned the difference between letting go and giving up. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning the past. It means choosing yourself, choosing peace, choosing the life you deserve, even if others don't understand it. I thought about Grandpa, about the Sunday afternoons in the workshop, about the way he used to run his fingers along the grain of a piece of wood and say, "It's not about what you see on the surface, Rachel. It's about the parts no one sees." That's where the real integrity lives. And I realized that's exactly what I'd done. I'd rebuilt my life from the inside out, quietly, steadily, with integrity, with care, and with love for myself finally. Life has this funny way of teaching you the same lesson over and over until you finally get it. For most of my life, I thought inheritance meant things: a house, a desk, a garden, antique books, furniture, photos, and frames. But sitting in my little backyard that night, wrapped in a sweater, watching the tulips sway in the wind, I realized something that hit me deeper than anything ever had. My true inheritance wasn't the house. It wasn't the walls, or the floors, or the desk, or the koi pond, or the stained glass windows. It was the values my grandfather taught me every Sunday without even knowing he was doing it. Integrity, self-respect, hard work, knowing when to hold on, and knowing when it was time to let go. That was the real legacy. The one no one could take from me. Not my mother, not my brother, not anyone. A week later, I walked past a little bookstore near my office. In the window was a sign: Writing Workshop, Start Your Story. I don't know why, but I walked in. The next thing I knew, I was sitting at a table with half a dozen strangers, pen in hand, staring at a blank page. The instructor smiled. "Tell us your story. Start anywhere." And for the first time in my life, I did. I wrote about the house, about the garden, about the reunion, about the betrayal, about the fire that burned in my chest when I realized no one was coming to save me, and how I stood up, walked away, saved myself. I poured it all out, page after page, and somewhere between writing the words, they told me it was just stuff. And it was never just stuff. Something clicked. It wasn't just my story. It was a story for anyone who's ever been the fixer, the responsible one, the person who holds everyone together until they realize no one's holding them. At the end of the class, the instructor came over and placed her hand gently on my shoulder. She didn't say, "This is good," or "This is well written." She said, "This class is honest, and that's what matters." And for the first time, I believed it. My mother and I kept meeting once a month. Some months were better than others. Some were tense. Some were actually enjoyable. Trust wasn't rebuilt overnight, but brick by brick, we were building something new, something real, something honest, not perfect, not polished, but honest. Ethan kept working. The handyman business took off faster than anyone expected. One afternoon, he called me out of the blue. "Hey, I got certified to restore historical woodwork," he said. "Got my first contract. Old church down on 5th. I smiled. "You like it?" "Yeah, I really do. Feels solid. Like I'm fixing stuff that matters." There was a pause. Then, quietly, "Thanks, Rach." "For what?" "For not giving up on me." I didn't say anything for a second, then answered just as quietly, "You're welcome." Not every family relationship was saved. Some cousins still ignored me at weddings. Some aunts still whispered behind my back. But I stopped caring. I stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't even offer me a bandage. Instead, I poured my energy into the people who showed up. Hannah, my coworkers, my neighbors, my chosen family. The people who respected boundaries, who didn't take more than they gave, who celebrated me not for what I could do for them, but for who I was. A year after the sale, Victor sent one last email. "The restoration is complete. If you ever change your mind, the invitation to visit stands." I stared at the message for a long time, smiled, typed back, "Thank you, truly. But the chapter is closed. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." And I was, sitting here today, telling you this story. I realize it's not just about a house. It's not just about a family reunion gone wrong. It's not even about betrayal. It's about something so much bigger. It's about knowing your worth. It's about understanding that family, real family, is not defined by blood, but by respect, by love, by effort, by the simple, quiet, sometimes uncomfortable truth that healthy relationships have boundaries, and that those boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out. They are doors. Doors that stay open for those who know how to knock with respect. For a long time, I believed that if I just worked hard enough, if I was successful enough, if I was helpful enough, if I gave enough, then maybe, just maybe, I would finally be enough for my family. But here's the truth. Nobody tells you. You don't have to earn love. And if someone makes you feel like you do, that's not love. That's control. That's manipulation. That's a transaction disguised as affection. I look back now and realize the house was never the point. The house was the mirror that reflected everything I had ignored for far too long. The imbalance, the entitlement, the constant pattern of me giving and them taking. Selling that house wasn't just about real estate. It was about reclaiming my peace, my future, my life. I wish I could tell you the ending was a fairy tale, that my mother transformed overnight into the parent I'd always wished for, that Ethan suddenly became the supportive brother I never had, that every extended family member reached out to apologize. But life doesn't work that way. Healing isn't linear. Some days are good, some days are hard. But every day, I wake up in a home that is mine, a life that is mine, a future that I built, not for anyone else, but for me. And maybe, if you're listening to this right now, maybe this story feels a little bit like yours. Maybe you've spent your life holding everything together. Maybe you've convinced yourself that if you just bend a little more, stretch a little thinner, give just a little bit more, then they'll finally see you, finally appreciate you, finally love you the way you deserve. But hear me when I say this. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to put down what was never yours to carry. You are allowed to choose peace over obligation. You are allowed to choose yourself. And choosing yourself is not selfish. It's survival. It's necessary. It's brave. My grandfather used to say, some people build with steel, others with code. Both change the world. But what I've learned is this. Some people build with boundaries, with courage, with the quiet, steady, relentless decision to say, I will no longer set myself on fire to keep others warm. If this story hit home for you, I invite you to share your own. Drop a comment. Tell me about a time you had to choose yourself, a time you set a boundary even when it hurt, because your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. And if this resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe, because here we talk about the hard things, the real things, the things that people don't always say out loud. And remember, family is important, but so are you. You are not selfish for wanting peace. You are not wrong for wanting respect. And you are never too late to write your own story. Your story starts now.